I know all anyone wants to talk about right now is heated rivalry.
What the? I'm coming to the cottage.
But there is yet another sleeper hit that everyone has been obsessed with, and it is back for a second season. We are talking HBO's The Pitt.
I have ideas for improving the department.
Okay, well... Want to tell me some more about your ideas?
That is the ER drama where every episode clocks in at nearly an hour for the season's 15-hour shift. And the doctors and the nurses of The Pitt in the first season, they were tackling mass shootings, the fentanyl crisis, and politics around vaccinations. I'm Radheyan Simonpillai sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Nicholas Quah and Sophie Gilbert, they're joining me to talk about The Pitt's return. Welcome back, y'all.
How's it going?
Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Listen, we all have seen the first 9 episodes of this new season because that is what was made available to critics. But only 2 episodes have been released so far for the public. So we are going to keep this chat as spoiler-free as possible. So with that in mind, Sophie, what were your expectations going into the new season and what were you hoping for?
I think I thought that season 1 would be fairly hard to top just because everything happened. Like, oh my God, that 15-hour shift of hospital. I think they had every crisis that you could possibly imagine. They had measles. They had, people, horrible stories about fentanyl and culminating at the end. I don't want to spoil the first season for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there is a real crisis event in the second half of the season. So sort of hoping that season 2 would have more of the great drama and the characters and the real propulsive storylines, but wondering kind of what they still had left to bring.
Interesting. And well, so look, Nicholas, you coming into this season, you were a fan of the first season, but not so much the new season. So tell us why.
Yeah, I suspect I might have the minority view on this, but yeah, no, I was really taken by the first season. It felt really novel, it felt really gripping, it felt incredible. And the thing that struck me about The Pitt is that essentially it's 2 shows working in tandem, right? On the one level, it's this hyper-realistic medical procedural, lots of blood, lots of chaos. At the same time, it's also a sprightly, somewhat like soapy character drama where you're following the lives of Noah Wiley's Dr. Robbie, head charge nurse Dana, and the residents and all that. And in the first season, the 2 sides felt really integrated to me. The medical cases really pushed character in really interesting ways. And the show felt like it had to prove something. And so it had a subtler, more enterprising touch. It had strong ideas about medicine society, but it wasn't constantly underlining them. And with the second season, it felt like it was doing that a lot more to me. It felt a lot more confident and comfortable itself, which is understandable given how many Emmys it won. But it does feel to me like the comfort has led to some excesses. So things are a bit less subtle now. They're more inclined to tell you what the show thinks as opposed to having you arrive there to yourself. And the characters are also a touch more fantastical. It's a bit more just fan servicey. So all of these things in combination just kind of put me at a distance a little more from the show that I really admired in the first season.
That's so funny because I agree with what you're saying, but I felt that more in the first season. So can you give me an example? Give me an example of what you mean though, in terms of where it's underlining its points in the second season.
Yeah, so I'll give you a contrast. In the first season, what to me the sort of Eye of the Duck sequence is this extraordinary birth sequence. A colleague of mine called it the most realistic birth sequence on television ever so depicted, and I agree. And what I liked about and what I thought was really powerful about that scene is how matter of fact it is, right? In culture, pregnancy is usually aestheticized in a way that sanitizes it, how frightening and difficult it can be. But by simply showing it as it is, it kind of lets the viewer arrive at their own revelation. And to me, that felt like a shorthand for what the season did really well. Whereas the second season feels a lot, to me at least, heavy-handed by comparison. And to me, the sort of short version of this, which I guess viewers would not be spoiled into, is the way it handles a new doctor, Dr. Baran al-Hashimi, who comes in. She's super pro generative AI. Slight spoiler, that optimism doesn't really pan out. And throughout those 2 episodes and through the 9, it feels like the show is telling you exactly what it thinks about this technology. And to me, the season, it has a lot of these beats more so than the first. And that kind of it bothered me quite a bit.
Okay, interesting. Well, Sophie, I know you are enjoying this new season more than Nicholas is. So, where's the show landing for you when it comes to what he's talking about, in terms of having this kind of viewpoint and how it's delivering its messaging?
Yeah, I have to say, I love it. I think The Pit is a throwback show in so many kinds of ways. Like it feels very familiar. It feels like a show that we would see maybe on television in the 90s, in part because it is so, I think specifically an heir to ER. It has much, the same producers, one of the same stars, the showrunner was previously worked on ER. So it's very much in that mold of like thrilling drama, but also it has a specific point of view. And when I think back to shows in the 90s, there was a lot more kind of well, no, I mean, not even kind of. There was a lot more moralizing on television. This was still sort of kind of the era of the very special episode, and you were coming in the wake of Norman Lear's kind of social realism sitcoms and, storylines like Maud, the sitcom, had a storyline about abortion, and there were, all kinds of different points of view on television, I would say, where TV really wasn't afraid to be didactic. It was often very clear about taking a moral stand. And ER was a bit like that too. And I think The Pit is sort of in that vein. It's very morally clear on things like vaccines. Like, should people vaccinate their children? The Pit says yes, absolutely. Like it will show you a child who is gravely, gravely ill, and it will, it's not afraid to sort of couch that in anything. So it sort of feels old-fashioned, I think, because we haven't seen that kind of moral clarity on television for so long.
I mean, it's, I guess, old-fashioned in the best and sometimes worse ways, but it's still something that does feel refreshing today. I am curious though, like both of you, you're both Americans, but you're living outside the U.S. I mean, Nicholas, you live in Vancouver. Sophie, you're a dual citizen living in the U.K. How does having that distance affect the way you're watching this show? Nicholas, let's start with you.
Yeah, I've only moved out to Canada since the fall of 2024, about near the end there. And I grew up in Malaysia, and before moving here, I lived in Boise, Idaho, Idaho being one of the places with the most restrictive policies around healthcare in the United States. So this, like the cross-comparative lens kind of makes it interesting to watch The Pit in the sense of I can see now what is sort of universal. There are a lot of things that depicted in The Pit, and that is in relation to the conversation about healthcare in America, that now that I'm here in Canada, there's quite a bit of overlaps, right? Emergency room wait times here and emergency room conditions in this country is, requires a ton of improvement. Lack of vaccinations also an increasing issue in Canada, and so there are some aspects of it where the universality of some of these crises is quite striking. But then now I also get to see what is specifically uniquely American, and that's also pretty interesting.
Does that make the show better for you then? Like when you realize how
In ways, I think there are aspects in which I think, when Americans talk about the crises in America, whether it's healthcare or politics, it tends to, be very American centric and saying that this is the worst version of its kind everywhere. And that sometimes happens in discourse here, and that sometimes happens on The Pit. And so I feel a little bit of distance from something like that.
Okay. And so Sophie, what about you?
I mean, I have to say The Pit is not out in the UK yet. Everyone is devastated. They are so, every time I write about it, people are so upset. They're like, when are we getting the show? I cannot emphasize how bizarre it will be to anyone watching the show not in the US that someone would have to leave hospital in the middle of a medical crisis because they're worried about bills. Like I mean, there's a very good storyline in season 2 of The Pit about someone who leaves the hospital for precisely that reason. And it's sort of unfathomable when you are not inside that system, when you're much more used to healthcare being something that is provided by the government. And I think to its credit, the show does deal with stories like that. I mean, I think on shows like Grey's Anatomy, very occasionally there would be an insurance storyline, but The Pit is really clear about the bureaucracy of hospitals. You have the billings person, and you have the CEO, and you have all the sort of business people on the hospital side, and then they're very much contrasted with the doctors who are doing the real sort of nitty-gritty work of keeping people alive.
I mean, like that, what you referred to there in terms of like not being able to afford healthcare, like it would, when that person receives their bill or when everything that kind of hit me as a real shock, and I promise I will never complain about a hospital wait time again after that moment. I mean, I want to talk about the show's structure, okay? Because Nicholas, I mean, this show, we have, as I mentioned earlier, like every episode it's tackling like 1 hour of a 15-hour shift. So what do you think are the advantages and also disadvantages of that format?
Yeah, the main advantage, I mean, the 15-episode season, boy, talking about a throwback, they're very, other than sort of broadcast networks, procedurals, right, like this streaming era, version of it, it lets you develop characters a lot more over that span, and it lets you sort of like develop a stronger and deeper relationship with the show. That sort of the 24 style format has an immediacy and an urgency that gives it real life. But the 24-hour style format is also pretty interesting as a limiter. There's only so much character development that can happen in a single shift and in a single day. And I think what was interesting about the first season is that it puts these really dramatic like events in the middle of it. Second season does that too, but compared to the climax of the first season, it kind of tracks us a little less so. And those kind of dramatic moments really like it activates character. And one is sort of curious as to the more that the Pit comes out, seasons 5, 6, 7, 12, how that format kind of then puts a kind of cap on how Dr. Robbie can sort of evolve in a day, for example.
Yeah. I mean, it did feel like, especially in that first season where it's like they had to do so much in this 15-hour shift to have any kind of a character arc. Sophie, how are you feeling about the way the structure, the episodes roll out?
I love it. I love how it works. I think even back in the days of watching ER, you would have these scenes outside the hospital, right, where you'd see people in their homes and you'd see storylines about their marriages and their kids. And I don't miss that at all. I love that the drama is so totally focused on the hospital. And I do think the characterization through the drama is done so well. And they do also do this thing where every season they bring in new characters and they throw them in the middle of the scene. And you sort of these characters, these interns or these student doctors have to very quickly learn what's going on because it helps us, I think, see things through their perspective. There's a sort of clarity and exposition that really helps us watch.
Mm-hmm. And I got to say, like, in terms of like, what they have to pull off in each episode to keep it interesting, I think it's interesting that every episode has to have someone get intubated. It was like, and watching, and the way I binged the season, it was like, it got really ridiculous. Like, oh, here comes this episode's intubation, right? Well, look, like, we're talking about, the Pit and how it was a sleeper hit last year. But it wasn't just like a hit with audiences that, of course, dominated award season, right? It won 5 Emmys, and also like won the best TV drama at the Emmys and then the Golden Globes this last week, which, by the way, that fuels some of my resentment towards the show because it beat Andor in those categories.
I totally feel you.
Yeah, but I mean, given the success, and of course HBO already confident enough that they greenlit season 3, do you think other streamers, networks, they're going to try and emulate this format, this ethos, and what this show does really well? Oh, sorry, I'll throw that to Sophie. Yeah.
I think they'll try. I think the reason why it works, or I think it's very, very hard to do well. Like there are so many network dramas and we hear about a very sparse handful of them. And there are lots that people watch, they're very popular procedurals, things that follow a very specific formula. But it's hard for them to break out. And I feel like The Pit has broken out because it is done so well, because it's so well written. The acting is so extraordinary across the board. Like the storylines are so good. I'm sure that if people are not copying the formula yet, it's because they know that it is a very hard thing to get right.
Okay, so then Nicholas, do you agree with Sophie on that? Do you think it's a challenge? I should say, like, I do feel like The Pit in some ways, in that intensity, it is capturing something what The Bear did, right? In terms of the kitchen, and I think that reignited it. So yeah, where are you feeling about that?
That's a really interesting because this is sort of existential question, right? Like, can HBO Max kind of do this again and again and again? And the question is, what is the fundamental thing about The Pit that makes The Pit, right? And it's not the 24-hour format because then it becomes gimmicky. It's like 24-hour fire station, 24-hour like police station. It is this combination of taking the spirit of an old school medical procedural and supercharging it with something that's unique to the streaming era and what the binge model can do for you, what the on-demand model do for you. The Pit is not a binge show, but it has a lot of metabolism things that feels very 2026 and modern. So it's, to me, like, you can't replicate the spirit and the sort of same team of The Pit across multiple franchises, but you can take a new sensibility and try to graft it into an old. What exactly that is, it's not my job. That's Casey Blois's over at HBO's job. But there is this idea of looking forward while remembering what worked in the past. And hopefully it can be done with another genre that's really, that is a tried and tested TV format. And I am excited to find out what the next thing is. I'm hoping that there's another one out there somewhere. And I'm sure everybody is too.
Yeah, we all are. So look, we had to leave it there. Thank you both so much for talking to us about The Pit.
Thanks so
Absolutely.
much.
Thanks for having us.
So Nicholas Quah is a culture critic at Vulture, based in Vancouver. Sophie Gilbert is a staff writer at The Atlantic, based in London, UK. Season 2 of The Pitt, streaming now on Crave, with new episodes dropping every Thursday. That's it for the podcast today. I'm Radheyan Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. We'll see you tomorrow.